I found out I was going to be interviewing you yesterday.
Oh,
last minute. Yes. So I tried to do a little bit of research as much as I could with the limited time. And before you became a VFX artist, you were actually studying to become an architect. Do you want to share a bit about that and kind of how that journey transitioned into what you do now?
I didn't know I could work in movies because I've loved movies and cinema since I was a kid, but it was never an option, like a professional option for me, because it was just not. It's not something that was in my mind that that's something I wanted to do. So I was trying to find something that I could do that involved both technical and artistical sides. So almost by default, I landed in architecture because architecture is really interesting and combines both. It's got an artistic side, it's got a technical side, because technology has always been a passion of mine as well. But I was not really loving it because it was a choice by default, not by love. But I had the opportunity to touch on the first 3D and animation softwares while studying architecture, because we were doing the 3D models for the projects for class and all that. And I realized that I really like that. I really like the animation software and the 3D world and all that. I really like that. So I would spend a few minutes doing the work for class, and then hours and hours and long nights just doing starships and planets and aliens and stuff like that, because that was what it was fun. But I never thought that it could be turned into a job, into a profession, until I saw the documentaries coming with the special edition DVD from the Lord of the Rings, the first Lord of the Rings movies. That was the year where I realized that after studying architecture for a few years, I was not enjoying it, and I didn't know what to do with my life. So I watched those documentaries, and I saw almost for the first time, because today is really easy to see behind the scenes documentaries on how movies are made, but not back then, because we were talking about maybe 14, 50 years ago. So for the first time, I saw how movie that I loved, because I loved that movie when it came out, was made in detail. And at the end of the documentaries, I'm assuming you've seen them. I'm assuming that everybody has seen them. You could see the artists doing the digital part, using computers to create, to doing all the post production, and to create Gollum, and to create all the magic that we could see in the screen. And I realized that same software that they were using was really similar to the one that I was already loving doing architecture. So I realized that you could actually make movies using a computer. I didn't realize that until then. And that's when I thought, yeah, okay, architecture is not for me. Let's do something that I love. So I quit, and I searched for a school, for a 3D and animation school in Madrid, in my hometown. There were only like 2. Now it's easier, much easier. And that's how it started. I decided I want to make movies on a computer.
Yeah. So you are originally from Spain. Yes. I would love to hear a bit about how it's different, or if it is different, to come up through Spain, because it seemed like some of your earlier credits were in the Spanish industry. And of course, you got your training there. So is there anything about, I don't know, the industry or learning the techniques that was different than how it came to be when you're now working on these big Hollywood projects?
Well, it's different now than then, more than here than there, because I've been away from Spain for over a decade now, so it's hard to compare now. What is different is the industry. It was clear in my mind that the movies I wanted to work on were not made in Spain. They were made somewhere else. So my dream was to maybe go to New Zealand and work with the team that had made the Lord of the Rings and had inspired me to do what I do. The software is the same everywhere, so you have to learn the software. That's there's no way around that. And my first jobs were in Spain, obviously, because I needed to gain experience in order to be able to get out of Spain into other studios in other countries that actually made the movies I wanted to work on. So yeah, it was I haven't studied anywhere else, so it's hard for me to compare. But yeah, the industry is different. And obviously, you don't get the big superhero movies or the big adventure fantasy movies that we get from Hollywood or from places like that from Spain. So I wanted to get out so I could work in that kind of movie that I loved.
I think it's really interesting learning about visual effects and how much they can be present in films when you don't even realize that work has been done on things. It can be the smallest details, or even just like a Parasite. Apparently, the exterior of the house they use, the entire upper level is not even real. And that's fascinating, where, people just assume that VFX is the type of stuff you do with these very, fantasy, sci-fi and whatever. But it's actually, it seems like it's much more commonly used, even in stuff that isn't the genre material.
It's everywhere now. Yeah, commercials and TV shows. TV shows are big now with Netflix and everyone watching lots of TV now with the pandemic and all that stuff. Yeah. VFX are in comedies and romantic movies and stuff like that. Obviously, when they're not that obvious, they're not easy to see. And that's a little bit of a curse for us, because our work is well done when it's not visible. Yeah. So it's hard to appreciate when you don't see it, but it's there. Every movie, every commercial, every TV show has some VFX. Obviously, some visual effects are some type of movies are very heavily into the visual effects part, but yeah, it's used for, it's a tool that filmmakers can use now among so many others. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the job, I feel like that's one of those departments they're sort of one of the unsung hero departments of the film industry. Because I was watching a behind the scenes thing it's funny you mentioned Netflix and you're from Spain, but the big Netflix show La Casa de Papel. So when they're doing the robbery and they've got to go into the underwater to get into the vault, apparently they were filming that in London, and the fake gold bars that they made were getting crushed because of water pressure. And of course, that's one of those things that you can't anticipate that happening. No. And so the visual effects artists had to go through and individually fix each gold bar to not look like they were squashed. And that, when we're watching that, we have no idea that happened. And so,
I guess they didn't know that was going to happen, and it was the only available option to fix that. So yeah, sometimes it's a tool that is just to fix things that you can't anticipate.
But it's funny because you were so inspired by the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and then you actually ended up working on the Hobbit trilogy that was listed on your IMDb credits. So talk us through the job on a technical level, but also share about how that was, emotionally, to hit that point in your career where you're continuing the franchise that inspired you to get into that line of work.
That was basic chance. Obviously, I wanted to work with them. I wanted to work with the big ones. That was my dream, but I never anticipated that it would be in the same saga. Obviously, it took me a long time, many years. I would send my resume every time I would update my resume and my portfolio. I would send it to everyone in the world, every studio, every animation VFX studio, trying to find an opportunity to work in the kind of movies that I wanted. And obviously, Weta, which is the studio in New Zealand that did the Lord of the Rings, I would send my resume 100 times a year, just trying to get that opportunity. And they ignored me for a long time, obviously, because I didn't have the right experience. I was not there yet. But one day they answered my email, my portfolio, I guess, and my experience was good enough to have an interview with them. They finally said, okay, let's this lady that sends us so many emails, she's the queen of spam, so let's talk to her. And by chance, they were starting to work on the Hobbit trilogy. I was not prepared for that. So finally I did my interview with them. They made me an offer, and I saw myself packing a suitcase to go from London, which is where I was working back then, to New Zealand, and land there to work with the same team that had inspired me years back doing the Lord of the Rings. same company, same universe, same saga, same director, Peter Jackson, and I joined the team, and I couldn't believe. I am not ashamed to say that I cried when I got that email from them finally responding to mine, and it was a dream come true. Obviously. Yeah. So sometimes I still can't believe it.
Well, you've done it now, and it's, it's now part of your resume and your highlight reels and all that stuff. So love that. When you are working on these big feature films, I would love for you to share more about how all of that works, because of course that's one of those things that people don't know how that works unless they work in that line of work. Obviously, I'm really good at forming sentences. So sorry. But because, when people watch a film, they can admire the acting because that's just the very first thing that they see, and they fixate on the performers. But a lot of what you're doing, we don't see what you're doing. We just see the final product. So when you're working on a film, are you just being given one scene, and do you have to work with other artists on that one scene? Or is it, how does that get divided up among all of the artists that are working on these big projects?
Usually it's not just one studio. The Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit are exceptions because Peter Jackson wants to do everything in New Zealand, so there was only one studio involved in doing the 3 movies. But that's not the usual. Usually, one movie, many studios work in the same movie. If you read the credits at the end of the movie, there's a lot of artists there, and they're usually grouped by studio. You can see ILM and Double Negative and Scanline, which is the studio I work now. And so they're divided by sequences. So different studios have different strengths. Different things they're better at than others. So we bet for the work, and client, which is usually the production company that's making the movie, they give different sequences to different studios, because if you divide the work, then you don't stress just one studio, so everyone has more time to do their job, and the results are better. So we end up not only working with our workmates, but with other studios, our workmates with other studios, and it's usually by sequence. For example, Scanline, which is the studio that I work now, we're very good at simulating liquids. Liquid simulation. We have a very good simulator for liquids. So usually when you see a big mass of water or materials that interact as a liquid, as a fluid, we could say, then it's usually us, because we're good at that. So different studios can have different things that they're good at. And then inside the studio, every artist gets one shot. So we divide the work among the different artists by shots. And also it depends on the department as well, because there are many departments with different specialities, but usually artists also have what they're good at or not so good at. So we divide this kind of work by the workload to make sure that everything is delivered the highest quality possible and on time.
It's funny that you mentioned liquids, because I know you worked on Aquaman, so I decided to be festive and wear my Aquaman shirt. So that film was incredibly groundbreaking, because we have never seen a story play out with so much of it happening underwater, but not just people, it's not like, oh, we're in a submarine and we're surrounded by water. It's people moving through water, speaking underwater. You have the hair, you have the movement. So really just share as much detail as you would like about making that. I mean, it's not boring. It's not, oh, people don't understand, people don't care. No. It's first of all, this show has a lot of people who love the DCEU films, and we like the geeky technical information. So really talk us through creating that world.
I cannot give many details because we can, because of secrecy and all that. So we cannot give a lot of details, but I can tell you that the goal was to obviously make the audience forget that you're underwater. Obviously you're underwater, this world underwater, but everything that's happening in the story happens the same way that it would happen in a normal movie outside of water. So it's there, obviously, because we don't walk, we swim, but everything needs to be natural. So you kind of forget that you're underwater. And obviously was not shot underwater because our actors need to breathe and stuff like that. But it was shot in a way, obviously, that need to float. So there were a lot of harnesses and cables involved that we had to delete. And one big thing when you're underwater is hair.
Yes.
Because all the suits are tight enough to not move, not to flow in water. So that makes all the simulations easier. But you have hair. You have some hairs. Unless you have a helmet, which sometimes you just do, just not see air. All the hair is digital. Obviously, the actors were wearing little swimming hats with tracking markers, so we could mark their movements and the heads, so we can then attach digital hair and do the simulation of the hair underwater. And that's probably one of the things that if you don't do it carefully, it's too obvious. So if you guys, I can speak for myself because I know what I'm looking at, but if you guys didn't notice it, then we did right. All hairs are obviously digital.
Yeah, because I've never done VFX myself, so I'm sure I'm going to butcher if I try to use any technical jargon. But when you're making hair move underwater, I mean, do you find videos of actual hair, like if you see like a shampoo commercial or something and people getting like water splashed on them, or do you just have to kind of imagine what you think the hair would look like? Like, do you have to use a reference, or how does that work? Are you allowed to say?
We always have reference for everything because our work is to mimic reality. So we need to know how reality looks like and works at some point to be able to mimic it and fool you guys, because this is the game we play. We try to fool you and you guys let us fool you. So it's we have reference on how everything works. But the simulation is more of a tool, for an automatic tool that it's in constant develop to get better. So obviously we don't, not me, it's not my department, but the artists that do it don't animate hair by hair. What they do is that there's a simulation of a mass of a hair. So you have to attach all the controllers that are the roots of the hair to the movement of a digital version of the actor's head. So what you create digitally would follow what the actor is doing. And you can give properties to this 3D material, let's say, like thickness, length, weight, and the movement of the actor is the one that is going to drive the movement of the hair underwater. So it's more of a piece of software, let's say, that calculates what hair would do in a situation like that when we give them the right coordinates and the right parameters for how hair works underwater. It's quite interesting.
It is. No,
it's not my department, so I love this thing. So every time they do it, I go sneak and see how they do it and how everything looks and all the steps they have to take, because it's also lighting will and color and texture. All those things will affect the final result. So it's really interesting. Yeah.
Another really memorable part of Aquaman is the trench sequence, like diving underwater. That shot is just... That's
our shot. We worked in that shot.
Gorgeous, where he's like diving and it's like, oh no, there's
flare.
Monsters in the water. Yeah. It's really cool. So when you have creatures like that don't necessarily exist in real life, is there a
Hopefully.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the whole thing, right? We don't know what's at the very bottom of the ocean. Let's not think about that. Let's not have nightmare fuel in your interview. But when you have these creatures that, as far as we know, don't exist in real life, where does the first design come from? Is there a separate art department that conceives of what these look like and then you use those as the reference? Or do you have to completely come up with what those creatures look like?
Usually there's always an art department. So it works because we're many different studios, and we all have to work with the same references to make sure that the final result is consistent. It is one movie, not many pieces of a movie. So obviously the director and the art director for the movie, which is sometimes it's a director, sometimes it's not, they have their own art department that design everything according to their direction, basically, and they come with different styles, and once there's a style, once there's a prototype design that the director likes and approves, then it goes through they usually give the modeling job to one of the studios, and that studio models in 3D whatever the art department draw in 2D, let's say, to design the creatures. And that goes also through different steps that the director needs to approve, because going from 2D to 3D is quite a ride. So once the director asks for changes and has notes and finally approves the 3D version of the creature, then whatever studio did that in 3D needs to share with all the other studios. So we all use the same creature coming from the design that the director approved. And then it goes through rigging, and then all the animators for the different studios that will work in those sequences have the same kind of creature. And so we end up sharing more than anything. But yeah, it needs to, every little step needs to be approved by the director.
Mm-hmm. So I did want to ask, since you work in VFX, since we touched a little bit on it, but I did want to explore it a little bit more. People don't always know about VFX unless they don't turn out well. And then they go, oh, those VFX look terrible. But I'm not asking you to get into trouble by naming names or anything like that. But in a general sense, with how the industry works, what exactly leads to the VFX not turning out well? Is it not enough time, not enough money, or like, can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Usually it's the lack of time, because we like to say that if you guys give us enough time, and by time I also mean money, because money buys time usually, then we can do it perfectly. When they don't turn out perfect, it's because we didn't have enough time. And this could be because there was not enough money, or the client changed their mind several times and asked for changes really close to the release date, in which case they didn't let us enough time to do our part, or technical difficulties, or there could be many reasons why we end up rushing in the end. And I don't like to bitch about things that don't turn perfectly, because I know behind every movie, behind every visual effects, whether it's good or bad, there's always a team doing the best they can with what they have. And sometimes the conditions we have to work are not ideal, but that's fine. That's fine, because we do the best we can. And it's usually the lack of time that could be related to money or the politics behind a movie, because that they change their minds, they decide to change the script, they decide to, all those things affect us, because they increase the amount of work load that we have, and the end date is never moved, and it gets closer and closer, and we end up having to rush at times and doing lots of overtime. And the departments that come last in the long line that the VFX pipeline is, they end up being very tired, working weekends. And so given the ideal conditions, we can do a perfect job, but the ideal conditions don't exist.
Right.
So we do the best we can with what we have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always respectable, because they're all workmates and they're all great artists with great talents. So even when they don't turn out perfect, it's still, yay, guys.
Yeah, because I know over the last couple of years, it seems like it's coming up a little bit more in conversation, because there are some pretty memorable incident to do with VFX
I know where you're going
wrong. No, I mean, it's not, because it's not just one thing.
Okay. Yeah,
it's not just one thing. There was, I mean, like, obviously, because you did work on Justice League, for those who are tuning in. So there were some reshoots and there were some internet memes made out of VFX not done particularly well. There was the Cats incident. There was the Sonic trailer incident. So, I mean, there's, you know, the list goes on and on. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No, but it's true. When the work is not done well, we're the first to know. So it's fine. It's totally okay. We know. So it's totally fine. Yeah.
And you mentioned money and how if there's not enough money, then the VFX don't necessarily turn out well. Is that because you need to pay people for their hours, or is there something about making the VFX that costs money, like something technical that we just regular viewers don't know about?
It's usually man hours. It's usually the hours for the team to work that they're obviously they cost, because you end up loading with work the artists that need to put a lot of hours, and that's not cheap, because there's hundreds of us basically, not because we're too expensive or we're rich, because we're not, but there's many of us putting a lot of hours in the work.
Yeah, I mean, I won't ask you to, you know, trash talk people in your industry, but I can't help but think about when Cats happened and just how big that was on the internet. It was like, people don't normally talk about VFX as much as they were talking about VFX because of the Uncanny Valley. And, you know, people were just like, why would you do all of that instead of just putting them into costumes? Like, it makes no sense, you know? So, I mean, that's obviously way above your, you know.
No, but every industry and every craft and in every way moves forward thanks to mistakes. You make mistakes, you try things, you learn from the things that don't work, you learn how to make them better. So in order to move forward with the technology we use, we have to make mistakes. It's really useful to know what doesn't work in order to find out what does work. And that means mistakes, obviously. So it's totally fine. It's going to happen. It's going to be there. It's always been there. It's always going to be there.
Yeah.
It's how art works.
That's so true. Another film that you worked that I know the audience would be interested in hearing you talk about was Man of Steel. And I did find you have your YouTube channel and you had a highlight reel and you were showing which bits were things that you had worked on. And specifically for you with Man of Steel, it was when they're at the beginning of the film and they're on Krypton and Jor-El is breaking out and he's going to start getting into action and there's all these spaceships flying around and shooting things. So can you share a bit about working on that? Because of course, Zack Snyder is a director that he draws his entire movie and he has storyboards. So I would be interested to know if you got to see those storyboards and if they were part of your process of working on it.
Usually storyboards and scripts are available to us. So whenever we think we need to have a look, we can. We don't always need to, depends on the job you're doing. And for Man of Steel, I joined the team a bit later in the production. So I joined to help finish the movie, which also happens a lot when you run out of time, you end up hiring more people. That's on the budget as well. You end up hiring more people to be able to finish a movie. So my job was more into finishing the spaceships, basically. So it was only helping the team in that way, finishing the final. I cannot give you many details, so that's why. But when it was more in this, whenever you see those spaceships, it's part of that was part of my job to optimize all the models, all the 3D models for those sequences. Yeah.
Well, all of that turned out great because I mean, you watch that film and you totally feel like you're transported to this other planet that doesn't actually exist in real life.
That was the goal.
Yes. Well, and Zach has great CGI and VFX. I mean, any film he's done, they always turn out great. I mean, there's things like, I can talk about this because it's not a film you worked on, so you don't have to, you can give whatever opinions you want. But there's a part in Watchmen where they have this camera shot that's moving backwards from a person's, like it starts on the person's face and they're in a jail cell and it's moving backwards and it looks like it's going through the bars. And you're like, how did you make that shot? And he revealed that the bars weren't even, well, part of the bars were there, but the part where they had a hole for the camera to go
the hole
through.
for the camera and then completed it with in CGI, I'm assuming. Yeah.
Yes. So that's, the magic of what you do for a living. It's like,
yeah,
people would never know that was how it was done.
But those kind of tricks have existed since the beginning of cinema. So filmmakers have been the magicians of storytelling and trying to make you believe is true what is not, and trying to awe you and make you wonder how they did it. And that's been there way before the digital era, obviously. So we'll learn from them, and we just try to do the same tricks using a computer now, but they used to do it using film and using double exposures and using all the trickery they could, just to make you wonder how the hell they did it.
Yeah, so that actually brings me to, you have a blog, and I was scrolling through it a bit, and my Google Chrome was acting up. I was trying to get it to translate so I could read what you were writing. I was reading through some of it, but so you have compiled together little blog posts and pieces that you've put together, kind of talking people through different filmmaking history, things to do with visual effects and tricks and things like that. So what inspired you to do that on the side and to put those pieces together? And when did you learn all of these things in film history?
I learned those things just because I find them super interesting. I've loved film and filmmaking since I was a kid, way before I knew I was doing it. And when you have a passion for something, it's really hard to not talk about it. And when you talk about it in the internet, it's really easy to find people that are as passionate about it as you are. So you end up sharing things that you love to talk about with people that are willing to listen. So all those things were already a passion of mine. So talking about them was not difficult for me. And when I found out that people out there would like to talk about these things and learn about the things I was learning from filmmaking, it was really easy to put the effort and tell these things to whoever wanted to listen. And also because many of those things that I learned about that I loved were in English, my second language. And I learned a lot of things from English documentaries, English books, and English. Everything was in English. And I realized there was a lack of material in Spanish. And the Spanish-speaking community in the world is very big. So I wanted to take all that information that I was enjoying so much and put it in Spanish, my mother tongue, in my own way, obviously, and also trying to contribute a little bit with Spanish material and Spanish information out there for whoever couldn't understand English. So it was part of trying to give back to the community and try to share what I love and just to talk with people that love the same things that I love.
I was also looking through your Instagram. I try to do as much research as I can. It's not easy when I'm given like less than 24 hours. But
you did a great job. I'm impressed.
But you had some stuff on your Instagram where you're wearing a mocap suit. So is that something where you're getting hired to be a mocap performer, or is that just something that you're falling into because you do VFX and you need a particular reference for something?
It's more like that because in the studio I work on, we have a mocap stage, a little mocap stage, and usually animators are the actors that use the mocap or need the mocap material. So sometimes they have mocap actors to do the thing. Sometimes they do it themselves. The animators know what they need better than anybody. So they put on the suit and they're used to it. But at times when there's not an animator, because we don't have that many female animators, something we should work on too. So whenever sometimes they've needed a female movement let's say. And when they didn't have anybody to do it and they were in a rush, someone mentioned it out loud some time back. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. If you, yeah, I'll do anything, because anything that involved in filmmaking is fun for me. If I could be on a shoot and a filming, and at any point, I love it. I really enjoy it. So they were like, oh, you wouldn't mind? Do you think you? And I was like, sure. I'll put the suit on and try and see if I can help. So I did it, and I guess I didn't do it very wrong, because they every time they needed a female movement, female mocap reference for whatever reason, they keep calling me. So they're my own workmates. When they think they need something that they don't have, they're like, hey, do you mind paying a visit to the mocap stage? And like, sure, I'll wear that suit again. It's fun. So it's more of an internal thing, and me saying yes to anything filmmaking related that's fun.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned earlier about how when you're doing VFX, there's references, and then the references are what you use to kind of mimic reality. Do you have anything you can share about maybe times where you've, I guess, created your own reference? I don't know if I'm explaining this right. So let's take How to Train Your Dragon. I think it was the first one, where there's this whole sequence where a dragon is kind of acting hyper, and anybody who has ever owned a cat, they're like, that's a cat. And apparently the animator people, or I don't know if it was one animator or animating team, they were like, oh, I have a cat and I'm just making my cat, but it's a dragon. So do you have any kind of stories like that where you've kind of drawn from your own life or your own references, or if there's even the freedom to do that?
It depends on the project, obviously, and we don't have the freedom to do anything we want all the time. I'm not an animator. I'm part of the layout department, but I've had to animate at times, and I know animators do that. And not only animators that need to have reference for things moving, it's also modelers. When you can see that on the modeling department, all modelers have figures of animals and books on anatomy for bipeds and for all kinds of animals, because they have to come up when they create a creature. It needs to be a creature that makes sense in the natural world, that has tendons and bones and muscle. And when it's a creature that exists, they obviously need reference from nature. When it's a creature that doesn't exist, it still needs to make sense in the way we know animals work and moving things work. And when it's for animators, they film themselves moving when they need to, and crawling, and they put up the mocap suit so they get proper references. And when it's something like, yeah, it's a dragon, how does a dragon move? I'm sure that they find references around them that might work. And if you can have a good idea and propose it to the art team or the director, and if they like it, great, because artists are really creative people, and they know about stuff. Animators know about movement, and modelers know about tendons and bones and all that stuff. And the layout department, which is the department I work on, we do all the staging, all the set dressing, and more importantly, the camera work. So everything that involves visual storytelling using the camera, then is us. So angles and different movements of the camera and how everything works, and into how to translate all those movements into information and feelings and all the message that the story needs to bring, then it's us. So it's on the camera. So yeah, we find reference wherever we need to.
Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned the word layout, and that was coming up a fair bit on your blog. And I swear you explained what it meant at one point, and I should have written it down, but I didn't, because I'm dumb and I had less than 24 hours to prepare for this. But okay. When I was going through your IMDb, there were different words listed for what your job title was. So there was scene composing artist, final layout artist, digital artist. And then most recently, I think almost all of your credits say layout technical director. So do you want to share a bit about what these different job titles mean to give people a better sense of
It's basically the same thing, but in the job was basically the same, but it can be explained in different ways. Because especially with a department like layout that is not very understood, people don't really know what layout means. It's a bit hard to explain. So now every studio has a layout department, and we know what we do. But a few years ago, it was not that clear because we were the ones doing the set dressing and doing all the camera work and making sure the camera moved where it should be. And we also do the animation blocking, and we do little things that we call layout as a whole now. But back then it was not that clear because we were doing many different things. So it's been listed in different ways, but it's basically the same thing. We are responsible for staging the shot and for moving the camera, doing the set dressing, the animation blocking, and everything that is in front of the camera is our responsibility. Mm-hmm. In a nutshell.
You had some really cool GIFs on some of your blog posts where it was it would be a GIF of a shot starting from an actor being, I think it was Lee Pace, but or maybe one of the GIFs was Lee Pace, and in The Hobbit. And so it's him just kind of surrounded by green screen, and then the image slides to, the original shot of him just being by himself, surrounded by nothing except green, and then it slides into all of the visual effects.
The final shot.
Yeah. So that would be layout, I guess.
The final shot is everything. The final shot involves also all the animation, all the lighting, all the texturing, all the comp. But all those departments look through the camera that layout provides and use all the elements that the layout department puts in front of the camera. So it's obviously the final shot that we see in the screen. It's the work of all of those different departments, hundreds of people, but it's layout that had to set that shot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'm also curious because I was looking again through your IMDb, and you had Joker listed, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. But also it said uncredited, and I was like, what happened there? Is that common? I mean, I think most of your credits
happens sometimes. It happens sometimes. It shouldn't, but at times it happens. When there's not enough room for all the names, then some of the names are not there, I guess. True. So they usually take out the names for people that have worked on the movie the least of the time. So if I worked on a movie for a couple months only, and they need to remove some of the names, those who worked on the movie for the less amount of time will be the ones that are left out. It shouldn't be that way, but at times it happens because credits the credit names can't go too fast, and they need to last a certain amount of minutes so you can. It's hard to explain, but it's more politics than anything. But sometimes not all the names are there. And it's happened to me 2 or 3 times, I think.
But I also think that credits are pretty interesting if you look at the history of credits throughout the film industry. Because if you go back before, I don't know exactly what year, but there's a certain point where if you watch films before a certain year, they show almost no one in the credits. I mean, you see,
or the credits would come at the beginning of the movie.
Yes,
which is also weird. With today's eyes, like everyone, the opening scene of 5 minutes with all the names. So we're not used to that. And obviously, more than 20 people were making those movies, and you could only see like 20 names. So there were a lot of people that were not in the credits. Hopefully, that has changed. Obviously, you have everyone. Everyone deserves to be there because a movie is made by everyone. A lot of people, even the cooks and the security personnel and the drivers and the helicopter pilot and for the sky shots and all that, they all are part of the movie. So now we have almost everyone there, and that's how it should be. That's why there's so many people there.
Yeah, it was such a trip because I was rewatching The Parent Trap from the 1960s, like way long ago. And I was like, oh, I wonder that actor who played her date at the dance. I wonder if he was in anything else. And I tried looking up who it was, could not find it. Nope. I have no idea who that actor is. And he had lines. He was
my God.
Oh,
wow.
I was like, who is this guy? Did he leave the industry? I want to know. What's his story? And I could never find out. So I think people are really spoiled nowadays, like not trying to get you to trash talk the movie goers, but I will be shady. I don't care. Because so many people leave when the credits start. And I'm like, listen, I don't expect you to literally read every name, but you should have a sense of, oh, there's a department that did this or whatever, that's part of what made this thing that you just enjoyed. I mean, that's the least
if you could see it through and 20 minutes of commercial at the beginning of the movie, you can see it through 5 minutes of credits at the end of the movie, and just pay respects to everyone that brought the movie to you, especially if you like the movie. You didn't? Okay, I get it. But if you like the movie, it's just 5 minutes.
Yeah. But even if you didn't like it, like, aren't you nosy? Don't you want to know? Okay, who messed this up? Let me look at who
do I need to be mad to? Yeah.
I mean, I'll do that. Or like if somebody, even if it's just, oh, that character, he sucked. Who is that guy? I want to know who he is.
Yeah, whatever works.
Yeah, it's, I don't know why, but I was raised to just sit through the credits, even when I was really little and I didn't want to because I'm a child and I don't want to sit there because I'm done. That's but boring. Now, I appreciate it because I'm going, oh, they have a department in this city and in this city.
And thank you. And I thank you for doing that. In the name of all my coworkers, I thank you.
Well, because sometimes you don't know, you don't realize when you're watching it, if you haven't looked up all the trivia yet, you don't know like that they were going to different parts of the world to make the thing, and that, maybe these interior shots were done in this country and then this part of the story was filmed in that country. And, that's just one example of that. But, stuff like, I think it's interesting. Whatever. Maybe I'm just a big nerd.
Thank you. You are, and that's fine. The world needs more nerds.
Like we talked about before, you did work on Justice League back in 2017, and now there is a new wave of interest in that project because Zack is getting to release his complete vision unmeddled with. So how do you feel about that, as an artist and as a creative?
I cannot say much, because my studio is working on it. So even though I'm not working on the project yet, I probably will soon. And until the project is released, we have to be careful with what we say. And usually the rule of thumb is if you're not sure, you probably shouldn't. So it's work. So one thing I can say, it's more work for us. So it's great. It's exciting. It's another version of the same movie. Sure, bring it in. And I haven't seen much. So even if I wanted to, there's not much I can say. So yeah.
It's pretty unconventional though, because I don't know if there's really any other instances of directors getting to be actively involved in
in making the same movies for the second time.
Yeah, well,
that's a thing now.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there have been multiple instances of longer versions getting released later, usually maybe by the studio, because they go, oh, it's the anniversary, let's do an extended
edition,
cut.
And the director's cut, and we can talk about Blade Runner has 10 different versions. But I think this is the first case where the movie is actually being made, not from scratch, obviously, but yeah, it's going to be a different movie in many ways.
Do you think that something like that, where there's rallying behind maintaining an authentic artistry, is good for filmmaking and potentially for you to be able to make things as they're intended and not get 20 different voices?
It ends up, for us, it makes no difference really. It's just another project, another version of a project. So it really makes no difference to us. What is interesting as an audience more than as a VFX artist is that now it seems to be possible to remaking a movie that didn't go well or that didn't go as expected by the director. I heard, maybe you know about this better than me, but I heard that there's a voice out there trying to remake some of the Star Wars movies that audience didn't like all that well.
And the recent ones.
Yeah, and they're maybe thinking about that. So that's an option that was never there in the film industry, and now apparently it's an option. If a movie didn't go well, you can just let's do it again. Okay. I guess the industry is investigating what they can and cannot do and how to make movies differently and how to make money with the movies they make, obviously, because it's also an industry. So it's more work for us. So as an artist, I'm not gonna complain. As an audience, I'm curious to see how things are going to work and see if it's going to be a viable option that make movies more than once. Okay.
Well, it's pretty interesting now that the industry is in so many transitional stages because, especially with the pandemic happening this year, so things either can't film or they can't film the way that they used to. And then potentially you have to kind of rework your stories to try to, if you don't need a bunch of people in that shot, maybe you don't put a bunch of people in that shot. Maybe, or
make it digital, make everything digital, which, okay, let's do that. And now we can't release movies in theaters yet as we used to. So different platforms are now releasing movies. So the industry entire world is changing a lot with the pandemic, but the industry obviously as well, because we still want to watch movies and TV shows. TV shows now are almost at the same level as movies. They have the same budget. They use the same actors. They use the same studios. We're working on TV shows more than any other time before. So now the two worlds blend, and with platforms like Disney Plus and Amazon Prime and Netflix and all that, the division that used to separate the big screen from the TV screen, now it's blurry. Now, and it's fine. It's fine. It's another way of having more work and having different ways of providing the audience with fiction to consume from home, which is what we need to do now, to stay home and stay safe until things go back to normal, hopefully soon.
I also wanted to make sure that I plug some of your other credits of upcoming stuff. And I'm not trying to, get you to say anything that you're not allowed to say, but just that people that are watching know that they're on your IMDb. So the upcoming Suicide Squad sequel, you're credited on that. And then also the upcoming MCU film, The Eternals, is also on your credits. So, if people want to keep track of what you're doing, or maybe you're probably done or almost done with the Suicide Squad, since that's like closer to being released, I think, than the Eternals. But I don't know. Listen, I don't know what's going on with any of those. I don't know if they're editing things, if they're just like putting marketing stuff together. I don't know the timelines on any of that. We don't know when anything is getting released. Everything is just in chaos and disarray.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Whenever they come out, we'll be happy. But even I don't know, because at this point, I think the industry is improvising. And that's fine. That's fine. We'll find a way. Well,
that's what's so fun is that maybe I'm just too chaotic and I like when mess is happening, but it's not my mess, because Warner Brothers made that announcement and then they said, we're simultaneously releasing our films in cinemas if the cinemas are open in your area, but they're also on HBO Max. And everyone is like, what? I can't believe this is happening. And you're going, okay, but we were kind of heading in this direction already.
It makes sense to me. I don't know where's the surprise. It kind of makes sense to me because not everyone is going to be able to or brave enough to go to theater. If you're not, don't. So whoever wants to go to the theater is going to go. Whoever rather stays at home and watch it at home, okay, you guys can make money two ways. Great.
Yeah.
What's the fuss? What's the? I was expecting this. I thought this was expected, and it's probably going to be like that for some time. And even when freaking COVID goes away, we're all vaccinated and everything goes back to normal and the theaters open full capacity again, probably all the digital releases and the platforms have learned enough to have both systems work at the same time. And that's fine. And that's totally fine. I guess it's the future. The future is coming towards us faster than it would have without a virus. It's totally fine.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some purists that have been really upset or their feathers are ruffled. And I'm going, okay, but my local cinemas closed in March and they have stayed closed. They have never reopened. They've been closed for all these months. So it's either watch it on HBO Max or I don't get to see it. Yeah.
So what's wrong with having those two options and make money those two ways, letting people choose how they want to watch your movie and give you their money? What's so wrong with that? It's totally fine. Totally fine.
I did want to ask you also, I think it was written in one of your blog posts or something like that. There was this recurring mention of you have a passion for science. Elaborate on that. It obviously wasn't important enough to write down or to mention in an interview. I don't remember if it was on your blog or if it was in a Spanish interview that I Google translated. I really don't remember. I think I went into like a fugue state and I blacked out and I just tried to research. So
yeah, science has been my other passion since I was a kid as well. When I was very little, I wanted to be a scientist. I wanted to be an astronomer. That didn't work out the way I thought it would, but that science has remained one of my passions as well. And I especially space and astronomy and everything that is space related it's big for me. I have a space tattoo on my arm because I love the thing. And every time in my free time when I've been able to collaborate with scientists and popularizing science and explaining things in 3D and working with them, I'm always on board because I think science is an important tool for humanity, and science will save us all. And speaking about science and learning about science has always been a big thing for me. So whenever I can mix the two and collaborate, not as a scientist, obviously, but as a digital artist in any way, I try to do that. And also, like with cinema, since we love to talk about the things we love, speaking about science is always fun for me.
I think one of the credits is something related to Cosmos.
Yes, that was also a big dream come true for me. Because the original, I don't know if you've seen the original Cosmos TV show from the 80s. That's one of the things when I was a little girl that made me fall in love with science. So now that they're doing a modern version of it, and Neil deGrasse Tyson is doing the new Cosmos, the second season of the new Cosmos. When I learned that by chance as well, this was not something that I was looking for, and they told us that my studio is going to work on the new Cosmos TV show. I jumped on it. When I run to my coordinator and say, please, let me work on that, because the original creator of the Cosmos TV show is this guy over here. So that's how much I love to work on the show. So I finally did it. They know me, so she was like, yeah, I knew you wanted to work on this. So yeah, don't worry, you're gonna be on it. I'm like, yeah. So yeah, science is big. Science is one of my loves.
And so is fitness, I think. You've got a lot of posts on your Instagram that's like very fitness focused.
That's been a quarantine project more than anything. Since I've been in isolation at home with not much to do, I decided I've always tried to be a little active. I used to run from time to time and stuff like that. But quarantine and isolated at home, I was like, okay, let's try to get fit. And I built myself a little gym at home, and that's what I've been doing this year. But that's a new thing. Really, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just going to stay active and learning as I go. Because I never had a six pack. Let's see if I can do it. Now that I have time.
You have one now.
Now I do. Thanks, COVID. I was wondering how do you get one of those? So yeah, but that's been only a quarantine thing. It's fun. It's keep me busy and distracted.
I think that makes you more of a superhero than a lot of everybody else. Like everyone else is like, oh, I have a COVID body of just like, I'm staying in, I'm not doing anything, I'm sad, I'm depressed. Like, obviously, I'm not making a joke about the people that are actually getting sick. I'm just talking about people who are staying inside and just not working out. And you're doing the complete opposite. Like, oh, I'm gonna get a 6-pack. Like, I'm gonna get a 6-pack.
It didn't work that way. But I was like, okay, let's try to stay sane by because when you're living alone in a pandemic and you're working from home and you're way too long being at home every day and you're trying to stay sane somehow. I tried different things to keep my mind and being away from home, being away from family. And this pandemic has been challenging for everybody. I was just trying to find ways to stay sane and distracted. And that was one thing. Let's try to do something, and it worked out that way.
I feel so inept now. You're making me feel like, oh God, like what have you been doing for all these months? You've wanted to be less. You wanted to just be less your entire life.
No, please don't. I've struggled like everyone else. I've tried many things that didn't work, and some others have worked, and that's it.
So are you working out like in your apartment? Are you going outside?
No. The goal was to try not to go outside, and I just got myself a set of dumbbells, and that's it. You don't really need much. You only need to want to do it and some time. And then during lockdown, I had lots of time. So I started little. I started like, okay, let's try to do something a little 5 times a week, and then let's try to do something every day. Let's try to
little 5 times a week.
And it's been a work in progress thing for many months that's turned out to be fun and it works. When you have time, you see results, and that works, I guess.
Oh, isn't the name of your blog "Geek is the New Sexy"?
Yes. But
can we unpack that? Because sure. I genuinely want to know. Like, okay. I don't know if this is an 80s thing, because I feel like anytime I try to go back and watch 80s teens films, there's always some nonsense about like, oh, it's so hard being a nerd. Listen, I was born in the 90s, and I never once got made fun of for liking Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. Like, what, these global billion-dollar franchises? Oh,
but that's a new thing. That's a new thing. Is it? Well, it's a new thing. It's been a new thing for decades now. But yeah, if you watch movies from the 70s, because I was born in the 70s, and in the 90s, the nerd was always made fun of. So it was the one that was bitten at school, and there was the one that with the glasses and was ugly. It was portrayed that way. We nerds changed that. The actual nerds changed the image of what being a nerd means, and now it's a thing that everyone is allowed to be a nerd, and it's fun to be a nerd. It's cool to be a nerd. So we managed to change that, but it's not always been like that. So being able to say, and especially for women were not allowed to be as much of a nerd as guys. It was more of a guy thing. So we've changed that. Now being a woman and being a nerd can also mean sexy, not in the looks kind of way, but in the I'm proud to do what I want. I do what I like. I spend my money and my time in the things I have passion for, and that's not something to be ashamed of anymore.
I mean, it's definitely a nice sentiment, but I also just feel like that idea that women have like not been nerds or like have not been present, I think that's a complete lie, because like if you go back to, let's say, like the original Star Trek series, women were the ones that were super active in that fandom and like trying, it's really? and even okay. And even what is it, the Frankenstein, what is it, Mary Shelley, like, women have been at the forefront of like geeky stuff forever. It's just men love to play victim. Like, I'm going to isolate the entire audience, right? I don't even care. And you know what? it's funny that you're talking about how, oh yeah, back in the day, like the way nerds were depicted, it was this whole like, oh, you know, you're being bullied and you're you know, you're unattractive or whatever. I honestly think that has caused a lot of damage in the sense that people, like, there's a certain subsection of people on the internet who grew up watching that stuff and they internalize that, and they are now these really nasty bullies on the internet, and they throw a temper tantrum. They're like, this isn't my Star Wars. These new like they throw the biggest temper tantrums. They are so rude and nasty. They bully celebrities off of the internet all the time.
Oh my God.
Because they internalize that complex. Like, I studied psychology in my upper, so like this is why I'm like going down this path right now.
Maybe we turned nerds into bullies.
Yes.
Oh my God! No, that was not the goal.
This was not how it was supposed to go.
You're gonna have bullies and haters and nasty people no matter what. Mm-hmm. So you have the nerd side and you have the other side, and it's fine. But at least you can be a cool nerd if you want to.
Yeah,
Don't be a hater.
There is no reason to, like, some people get so angry. Like, I have my own channel separate from this channel because I come on here sometimes and I do interviews for the show, but I have my own channel where I just share my own opinions about things. And I will have people come on and get so mad that I say that I didn't like a film. And it's like, listen, I'm not saying that the actors should die or that that these people are like evil and that they don't deserve happiness in life. I'm just saying, I don't like this story. It was kind of
It's just a movie. It's just a movie. And we're allowed to not like it, people. Totally fine. I so agree with you.
I think it's also it's a social media problem where, because people have they don't have that proximity, especially now with COVID, but even before that, where people can just say things, but they don't have to witness the reaction in real time of like, I said this thing
no consequences.
To this person. Yeah, there's no consequences, and you don't get to develop that sense of empathy of the direct consequences of your words and what that is going to do to the person that you say them to, and they don't see that in real time. Yes. So people just need to honestly like put the phone down. And I say this as someone, I'm always on my phone, but like, sometimes you can just write the tweet, you can say the like really intense opinion, but then you delete it and you don't actually tweet it. You just write it down and then you delete it.
As a therapy?
Yeah, you don't send it. Because I do that all the time. I'll be like, I'm like, this is so annoying. And then I just delete it. I'm like, that's all I needed.
One of my favorite sports is to scream at bad movies.
Which ones? Tell me.
No.
Which bad movies? I'll tell you mine. I don't care.
But at home, when a movie, it's a rare occasion when this happens. But when it does, when a movie really makes me angry, and it has happened, and I find joy in screaming at the movie and saying why I'm angry at it. But that is not disrespectful to the people that made the movie, because I know how movies are made, and I know it's a lot of people making a lot of different decisions, and it's not always in their hands to make what they would like to make. So even when I'm bitching at a movie and I'm screaming at a movie, it's fun for me. It's part of me interacting with a piece of art on an industry I love. It has nothing to do with the people that actually made the movie. I'm not angry at them. I'm just angry at the movie. And that's fine. That's fine. It's fun. It's fun. Some movies we like, some movies we don't. And you know what? You learn a lot about filmmaking when you watch bad movies. That's a great exercise, because it's easy to watch a good movie and say, hey, I know how movies are done. No, making a good movie is really hard, and watching bad movies will teach you about filmmaking way more than watching good movies. And it's a lot of fun sometimes. Just grab a glass of wine and with a couple of friends, not now after a pandemic, and just laugh at a bad movie and try to figure out, why is it bad? Why didn't it work? Why would I have made it differently? Mm-hmm. And you learn about filmmaking way more.
Mm-hmm. I love doing that. I love like nitpicking at stories or the way. Honestly, one of my biggest pet peeves with films is when they try to put something out and act like it's romantic when it's not romantic and it's super toxic and gross. Like, honestly, I feel like I'm a one-woman campaign against the original Grease film, the main couple, Danny and Sandy.
God, yeah.
I hate both of them. So not the actors. The actors, they're actors.
Obviously.
The characters, they're the worst. Everything they do enrages me, and the way that they interact with each other and the havoc that they wreak on the people around them. They're the worst people. If I met them in real life and if they were in trouble, I wouldn't help them because the world would be better off without them. They suck. They're the worst.
I haven't watched those movies recently for many, many years. So in my head, they still work because I watched them when they were new for me when I was a kid. I wonder how I would feel if I watched them again today.
I'm gonna tell you right now.
Okay.
Danny Zuko, after he cheats on Sandy at the dance, because he gets with his ex, and obviously that's a metaphor because they're dancing. It's a musical, so they're dancing. But the real life interpretation of that is he was messing around with his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend, or not even his ex-girlfriend, his ex-fling, Cha-Cha. He's like, why are you dancing with her? You came with Sandy. That's first of all. So Sandy gets upset and she leaves. They go to the drive-in. What does he do? He gives her a ring to be like, oh, he wore my ring. And she's like, oh, Danny, thank you so much. This means that you respect me. And he's upset that she that's how she interpreted it because he thought he was going to get some. And then he tries to make a move on her. And then he literally tries to sexually assault her. And she leaves the car and she's like, I'm not getting back in this sin wagon. And then she throws the ring at him. And then what does Danny do? What does Danny Zuko, my arch nemesis Danny Zuko, what does he do? He sings a song about how sad he is. He sings a song about how sad this is old.
So true.
He sings a song about how sad. There's a line in the song where he says something about Sandy, my darling, you hurt me real bad. Huh? You just tried to assault her, sir. I'm getting so red. I'm so sorry. This is probably not what you signed up for today to do this interview, but we're hanging out.
This is much better.
We're chatting. It's just I hate him. I hate him, and I hate her because she's awful too. But he's worse. But they both suck, and they're awful. And Grease 2 is better.
I don't think I've seen Grease 2.
Oh my God, it's the best film.
I'll give it a try.
It's so good. No, because there's actual character development and it's funnier and the songs are better and the people are not obnoxious and gross. And everybody who hated on Grease 2 deserves to, get shaken aggressively by the shoulders because they're stupid and they're wrong. And Grease 2 is better than Grease 1. So, and I will die on this hill.
You just made me watch Grease 2 tonight because I didn't know what to watch tonight. So tonight is Saturday. It's popcorn night. I'm going to watch it for you.
It's so good. It's so good. The thing is that it was so ahead of its time. And also it was directed by a woman and you can tell.
That's probably why. Exactly. That's probably why.
And she was the choreographer for Grease, the musical, but also the first film Grease. She worked on it as the choreographer. So she was very familiar with that world already. And just, the characters have actual character development. You see people do bad things, but then they learn from them. And just it was so far ahead of its time. I cannot believe that film derailed Maxwell Caulfield's career the way that it did when they thought that he did a bad job. And I'm like, that's just because you were unprepared in 1982 to see a man be emotionally vulnerable.
Okay. You just made me watch that movie tonight.
Unprepared. You were unprepared. It was ahead of its time. I will die on this hill. And I didn't know I was going to scream at you today.
I will let you know what I think about it tomorrow on Twitter or something.
Oh my God. When people watch this episode go live, they're going to be like, what is wrong with LadyJenevia? Because I try to keep myself very composed and professional when I come on Matt's show. But this is real. This is me unfiltered where I'm just like, no, Grease 2. The amount of tweets that I have on my account about Grease 2, so many, but it's better.
I will look for them.
It's So I think I'll wrap it up before I further derail this interview even more. I hope that you had some fun and thank you for coming and sharing about your work and about the field. It was really interesting because I didn't go to film school. I don't get to know these things. So it's really fun for me to learn.
But you know about these things because you just told me why Grease 2 is better than Grease 1. So you know about filmmaking more than you know, sister.
It really is though. I've been, it's only eventually I'm going to do video essays about Grease and Grease 2. And I'm going to set the record straight because I have had it with people acting like Grease 2 is a bad film.
Can I be on them? Can I be on those videos?
You want to make a Are you kidding me? You want cameo? Like I will. Sure. You are totally invited. Absolutely.
Okay, let's do that. That.
It's so good. And like Adrian Samed as Johnny Nagarelli, just comedic genius. Like he mispronounces words. Why? I don't know, but it's hilarious. Like when he says it's there's a line in one of the songs where the word menstruation gets said, but he says mental-stration, and it's like, sir.
That's genius, by the way.
It's making me laugh like that. I'm gonna fall off my chair. There's a whole song about sex education, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant because I mean I don't know how it was for you growing up in Spain, but the U.S. has a very weird attitude about teaching kids.
I know. I know a bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a whole thing. So they have a whole song that's like kind of poking fun at their teaching sex ed. And it's hilarious. It's comedic, top quality content. And also, they do a whole dance number at a real bowling alley. Do you know how slippery those floors are?
I've done that. I fell after crossing the line. Yes.
They are doing full-on pirouettes and lifts and stuff. Like, they risked their lives to give us this content. And I am not here to stand for that disrespect. No, sir. No, absolutely not. No, sir. No, ma'am. No. But I'm sure I'm going to get yelled at by the team. They might cut this out. It's fine. Thanks for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure. And
it was great.
Come back anytime.
Thanks for having me. Count on me anytime as well. And you and I have a date.
Yes, we do.